Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, The Love Quirk by minimeowngi. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin Chapter 1, The Incident. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long, golden shadows that stretch across the quiet streets. The air is thick with the heat of the late afternoon, but the tension between Katsuki and Izuku is colder than any breeze. They patrol together in an uneasy silence, as always, because neither of them knows how to communicate with each other without it turning into a shouting match. Today marks the last day of their work studies, and neither of them intends to let the other outshine them, at least, not without a fight. That's why they're meticulously surveying their surroundings, looking for any sign of trouble, so they can jump in and one-up each other by winning a fight against a villain. Izuku glances over at Katsuki, who is walking a few steps ahead, his brow furrowed in his usual scowl. It's always like that. For some reason, even if they're always together, Katsuki seems to find it so hard to just stay by Izuku's side. He always has to be one step ahead, which doesn't really bother Izuku that much since he's used to it, but sometimes, he does wonder if Katsuki will ever hate him less, just enough so they can walk together like normal friends do. Izuku watches as the faint crackling of sparks dance across Katsuki's hands, the only indication of the restless energy that constantly churns within him. It's a habit, a way of releasing some of the explosive tension that always seems to be bubbling just beneath the surface. Izuku, on the other hand, keeps his focus ahead, completely calm, his pace steady and measured, and simply trying to keep himself busy by observing his surroundings despite how admittedly boring it is right now. "This is boring," Katsuki mutters under his breath, his voice thick with frustration. Izuku shares the sentiment. Katsuki kicks a stray rock off the sidewalk, the sound echoing through the otherwise silent street. "It's our last day, but there's nothing but old ladies crossing the street and wannabe heroes taking selfies. 2F boring. Let's go find some real action somewhere else." Izuku gives a small, knowing smile, though Katsuki can't see it because he's walking ahead. "Patrols are important too, Kaken," he replies, his tone patient but firm. "Not every day has to be a battlefield. Besides, isn't it a good thing that nothing bad is happening? That means everyone is safe, right?" Katsuki scoffs, shaking his head. But before either of them can get into their usual back and forth, because Katsuki always has something to complain about, a loud crash shatters the calm. The sound of glass shattering and metal crumpling echoes down the block ahead of them, drawing their attention and instantly ending their conversation. Without another word, both of them spring into action. Their footsteps PND against the ground in unison as they break into a sprint, the thrill of the chase setting their adrenaline alight. They round the corner, and the scene unfurls before them. A small convenience store is under siege, its windows shattered and the door barely hanging from its hinges. Inside, two villains are in the midst of a robbery. One of the villains is a towering man with muscles bulging under his torn shirt, his eyes wide with manic energy, a typical strength quirk. The other is a woman, small but calculating. Her eyes are sharp and focused on every movement around her, and there's no trace of fear in her expression, only the cold confidence of someone used to being in control. Katsuki's lips curl into a fierce grin at the sight of the villains. Finally, he growls, his eyes lighting up with the thrill of the fight. "Stay out of my way, Deku." That's the only thing Katsuki says before he rushes forward to confront the villains. Izuku doesn't even bother to respond to the usual taunt. Instead, he activates his communicator, sending a quick message to Shudo. "Shudo, we've got two villains, super strength and an unknown quirk. We'll need backup and the police." "Got it. I'll be there soon," Shudo's calm voice crackles through the static in response. Without missing a beat, the fight begins. Katsuki is a blur of motion, charging at the female villain with a ferocity that can only come from someone desperate to find an outlet for his anger. Explosions rock the air as he launches blast after blast towards the villain, forcing her to dodge and dive, her weapons rattling to the ground as she's pushed into a close combat. Izuku takes on the super strong man, his focus sharpening as he uses his agility and the power of one for all to stay one step ahead of the villain's thunderous punches. The ground cracks under each devastating swing, and Izuku dodges just in time, feeling the rush of wind from the near misses. His body moves on instinct, but his mind races, calculating his next move as he continues to dodge and strike. Despite having a strength quirk, the villain isn't really that strong. Well, he's strong, but to be fair, Izuku has fought much worse villains, and Izuku can't hurt him too much, just enough to hold him back until the police arrives. "You're dragging your feet, Deku." Katsuki shouts, his voice harsh over the chaos, but there's a certain pride in it too. He's clearly showing off. His fighting style is ruthless, relentless, and he's not about to let anyone, especially not Izuku, outdo him. "I'm not dragging anything, Kaken." Izuku yells back, narrowly avoiding another punch from the villain. "Focus on your own fight." Katsuki's explosions fill the air, lighting up the chaos like fireworks. With how flashy Katsuki's quirk is, Izuku is pretty sure Shudo and the others won't have a hard time finding them even without a location scent. Katsuki's explosions fill the air, lighting up the chaos like fireworks. The female villain barely has time to react before she's cornered, her weapons clattering on the ground as she's forced to fight Katsuki hand to hand, which isn't working to her favor, because Katsuki is particularly well trained in this kind of combat. Izuku's opponent is a different story. While his attacks are not devastating enough for Izuku to seriously worry about, the villain's energy seems limitless, taking Izuku's attention fully. Izuku's breath comes in sharp bursts, using his speed and precision to stay just out of reach, dodging blows that would crush any normal person. His heart beats faster, not just from the adrenaline, but because he knows that if he falters, even for a moment, he could get hurt, probably not worse than the injuries he's had in the past, but he still wouldn't want to be a burden to Katsuki. For a brief moment, Izuku allows himself to glance toward Katsuki. There's a flicker of pride in his chest upon seeing how beautifully Katsuki fights, his precision, his aggression, the raw power in each of his movements, everything about him is unmatched, breathtaking, even in the heat of battle. Being distracted in the middle of a fight is not something to be proud of, but Izuku is very glad that his attention is on Katsuki at this particular moment, because it gives him enough time to react to what happens next. Izuku watches as the woman's eyes widen in panic, shouting something frantic and unintelligible towards Katsuki. Before Katsuki could even comprehend what she's trying to warn him about, a burst of invisible energy erupts from the woman's body, sending Katsuki flying backward, completely surprised by the sudden quirk use when they were just physically fighting earlier. "Kaken." Izuku's voice cracks as he quickly abandons his own fight without a second thought, throwing himself toward Katsuki. His heart pounds as he reaches him just in time to catch his body, preventing it from taking on even more damage from harshly hitting a hard surface. Katsuki's body is limp and unresponsive in Izuku's arms, and he wants to scream. "Damn it, Kaken, please wake up," Izuku frantically mutters as he feels his entire body shaking out of pure terror. He gently lowers Katsuki to the ground, hands shaking as he checks for injuries, but there's no sign of anything immediately life-threatening. His pulse quickens. Nothing about this is calming him down at all. Because Katsuki is still unconscious. He's still not responding, and Izuku doesn't know what to do. "Izuku." Shudo's voice cuts through his panic, finally giving him a bit of comfort. Shudo arrives with the police, his ice powers immediately surging forward to freeze the super-strong villain Izuku was fighting earlier. He's quickly apprehended, and in the rush of activity, Izuku barely registers what's happening around him. He doesn't even know where the female villain is or if the police got her too, and he honestly couldn't give a f when Katsuki is still unconscious right in front of him. Nothing else matters. Katsuki isn't waking up. Why isn't he waking up? "Kaken, wake up," Izuku whispers, his voice breaking, trembling as he brushes a stray lock of blonde hair from Katsuki's forehead with shaking fingers. He feels tears of fear threatening to escape his eyes, but he holds them back. That wouldn't help the situation. He needs to be brave for Katsuki. "You're okay, right?" You always are. Please, Kaken, please wake up. But Katsuki doesn't stir. His body is completely still, and Izuku would have collapsed in tears if it wasn't for Shudo running to his side and holding him tightly, reminding him to be strong. It's okay, Izuku. He doesn't have physical injuries. And he's breathing. He'll be fine, Shudo calmly says beside him. Let's take him to Recovery Girl. She would know what to do. The air feels thick and suffocating as Izuku and Shudo run through the halls of UA High, with Katsuki's body draped over Izuku's back. It's a bit awkward because while Izuku is strong, Katsuki's body is still bigger than his, but Izuku pushes through. He tries to calm himself down, focusing simply on the goal of bringing Katsuki to the infirmary, but he couldn't help but worry anyway. It's Katsuki. He's always full of energy, never this still and unresponsive. Seeing him in this way, so fragile and unmoving, tugs at something deep in Izuku's chest. He'd seen so many heroes get injured in ways much worse than this, but this is affecting him so badly to the point where he doesn't know how to take it. Shudo strides beside him, his expression unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders is unmistakable as he tries to keep up with Izuku's pace. The silence is oppressive between them, broken only by the sound of hurried footsteps and the soft rustling of Katsuki's costume against Izuku's. Izuku's heart pounds with each step, dread crawling up his spine as he thinks of the worst scenarios this can possibly end with. When they finally reach the infirmary, Recovery Girl is already waiting for them, her sharp eyes flicking over Katsuki with practiced efficiency. Set him down there, she directs, her voice calm but insistent as she gestures to one of the beds closest to them. Tell me what happened. Izuku gently lowers Katsuki to the bed, his movements careful as though a single wrong touch can shatter Katsuki completely. He brushes off the dust from Katsuki's costume, trying not to focus on the bigger and scarier issues, like how unnervingly still Katsuki is. He was hit by a quirk during the fight. We're not sure exactly what it does yet, because Kaken doesn't seem to have any physical injuries, but the quirk knocked him out cold right away. Shudo, who had been standing off to the side the entire time, nods in agreement. I saw him take a direct hit. There's no visible damage, we checked, and he's breathing just fine, but we didn't want to take any chances by waiting for something to show up before getting some help. Recovery Girl hums thoughtfully, her eyes narrowing slightly as she begins to examine Katsuki for injuries. Her movements are quick and precise, honed by years of experience that neither Izuku or Shudo has. She shines a small light into Katsuki's unresponsive eyes, checks his pulse, and presses along his limbs, feeling for any hidden fractures or breaks. Izuku prays that nothing is wrong, that Katsuki is just sleeping and will be completely fine when he finally wakes up. But the more time passes, Izuku's thoughts get more and more frantic. His hands twist together nervously as his thoughts race. What if it's something serious? What if the quirk isn't physical, but something mental? His mind spirals, the possibilities growing darker and darker with each passing second that he doesn't get any answer from Recovery Girl. He wants to say something, demand an answer, but the words are caught in his throat, trapped by the weight of his fears. He's stable, Recovery Girl says after a moment, her voice cutting through the fog of Izuku's anxiety. No injuries beyond some light bruising. We have to monitor him closely, though. The effects of the quirk might take time to show, and we have to be ready when it starts affecting him. Izuku exhales shakily, relief flooding through him, but it's still tempered by lingering concern. He takes a tentative step forward, his voice barely above a whisper as he asks, so, he'll wake up soon, right? That depends on how his body responds, Recovery Girl answers, her gaze softening as she looks at Izuku. The quirk might have induced unconsciousness, or he could just be recovering from the fight. Either way, you did the right thing by bringing him here quickly. But no need to worry too much. He's not hurt, and that's what matters most. Thanks, Recovery Girl, Izuku murmurs, his voice low and filled with gratitude, though his eyes never leave Katsuki's face, as if afraid that his health will suddenly deteriorate if Izuku takes his gaze off of him for even a second. Shido steps toward the door, his voice quiet and firm. I'll let the others know that Bakugo is okay. Call me if anything changes or if you need me here. Get some rest too, Izuku. He'll be fine. Izuku nods absently, his attention still entirely fixed on Katsuki. He watches his friend's unmoving chest, searching for any sign of life, any small indication that Katsuki is still with them, just to give himself comfort, even though everyone has reassured him that Katsuki is fine already. The sound of the heart monitor's rhythmic beep is almost too loud in the stillness of the room. Minutes stretch into what feels like hours, but there's no change in Katsuki at all, no flicker of awareness, no signs of waking up. Recovery Girl checks on them from time to time, but she mostly leaves Izuku alone with Katsuki, perhaps understanding just how serious this is to Izuku and how Izuku needs some time alone with Katsuki. The silence feels heavier with the two of them alone in the infirmary. Izuku leans forward, his elbows resting on his knees as he watches Katsuki's face, hoping and praying for any sign that he's coming back to them. Kaken, Izuku whispers, his voice barely audible as his fingers curl into tight fists. You're going to be fine. You always are. You're the strongest person I know. His throat tightens, the words heavy with more than just hope and desperation. But seeing you like this, it's scary, Kaken. Please don't scare me like this ever again. You're never the one who needs saving, so wake up soon, okay? Please wake up. Katsuki doesn't respond. He shows no sign that he's hearing anything Izuku is saying. His face remains relaxed in a way Izuku has never seen before. There's no scowl, no flash of irritation, just an unsettling stillness that makes Izuku's heart ache and scares him way more than Katsuki's angry looks ever will. I'll stay right here, Izuku eyes softly, reassuringly, his voice thick with determination. No matter how long it takes. I'll be right here, Kaken. I promise. And he does. Time drags on, the minutes bleeding into one another as the sun sinks lower and lower outside the infirmary windows. Recovery Girl is still checking on them periodically, her calm presence giving Izuku a small comfort, but he still refuses to leave even when she suggests that he rest too. The exhaustion of the day's events clings to him, but he remains by Katsuki's side as promised, his eyes never straying from the still form on the bed. Finally, just as the clock nears midnight, something shifts. Katsuki's fingers twitch first, the motion subtle but unmistakable. Then, his eyelids flutter, and for a brief moment, Izuku's heart stops in anticipation. Kaken! Izuku exclaims, jumping to his feet, his voice trembling with a mix of relief and urgency, and tears threatening to escape his eyes once again, but out of happiness this time. You're awake. Katsuki blinks groggily, his crimson eyes unfocused at first, like he's not even sure where he is or what's happening. His voice is rough, laced with confusion and irritation, a sound Izuku didn't know he missed even though it hasn't even been a whole day since he's heard it last. Deku. Izuku leans over the bed, his breath catching in his throat. I'm here, he says quickly, a soft smile breaking through the worry. You're okay, Kaken. You're back at UA. Katsuki frowns, his expression sharpening, even through the haze of grogginess. What the hell happened? Why am I here? Izuku hesitates for a moment before answering, his voice soft but steady. You got hit by a quirk when we were fighting the villains earlier. It knocked you out cold, but we don't know what it does yet, so you still have to be monitored. Recovery Girl says you're fine, but I wasn't sure until you woke up. I'm so glad you're awake, Kaken. Katsuki groans, lifting a hand weakly to rub at his forehead. TCH. I remember now. Can't believe AF Extra managed to knock me out. That's embarrassing. Don't tell anyone about this, you hear me? That's okay, Kaken, Izuku reassures him, his voice gentle as always. What matters is that you're awake now and you're okay. Katsuki squints at him, his gaze narrowing with suspicion. How long was I out? A few hours, Izuku admits, his voice quieter now. I stayed with you. Katsuki scoffs, which is only to be expected from him, but there's something strange, there's a softness in his eyes that Izuku can't quite place. You're such a DMN nerd. No one ever told you to sit there and wait like an idiot. Izuku chuckles softly, the tension finally easing from his shoulders. Katsuki's words are harsh as always, but Izuku knows him well enough to know that he doesn't mean anything bad by it. Yeah, maybe. I'm just glad you're okay, Kaken. I had to make sure. Katsuki doesn't respond instantly, but the way his gaze lingers on Izuku with an almost soft tone speaks volumes. Izuku shifts uncomfortably under the intensity of it, not really used to Katsuki looking at him for this long. Hold on, I'll get recovery girl. Izuku blurts out before standing abruptly and rushing out the door. He returns moments later, this time with recovery girl and a young apprentice who specializes in medical support. The apprentice moves toward Katsuki with practiced precision, her eyes glowing faintly as she activates her quirk. Good to see you awake, young Bakugo, recovery girl says, her tone soft and professional. Let's make sure there's no lasting damage. I'm fine, Katsuki grumbles, his voice stronger now. Stop fussing. The apprentice doesn't seem fazed by Katsuki's complaint, still scanning his body thoroughly to look for any damage. Izuku watches nervously, his body tense as he stands by, unable to keep his eyes off the small movements, the shifts in Katsuki's posture. A few moments later, the apprentice straightens, her expression neutral as she finally finishes scanning. No physical injuries, she reports, simply repeating what recovery girl had already confirmed earlier. But, there's still a lingering effect of an unknown quirk. It seems like a very strong quirk, though. It's completely embedded in his system. Katsuki's scowl deepens. The hell does that even mean? It means that the quirk that hit you is still active, the apprentice explains, her tone flat, which somehow reminds Izuku of Shudo. I can't identify what it does, but I can confirm that it hasn't worn off yet. It actually seems to be clinging to you very persistently. Recovery girl sighs, stepping closer. If there are no immediate symptoms and you feel fine, there's not much more we can do right now. But you'll need to be monitored, just in case. I told you, I'm fine, Katsuki snaps, glaring at everyone in the room. I don't feel any different. Whatever that extra's quirk is, it obviously doesn't do anything. Nothing to worry about. Be that as it may, recovery girl interjects firmly, Midoriya will keep an eye on you while we communicate this issue with the police and other pro-heroes to see what we can do next. And if anything unusual happens that indicates the effect of the quirk, I expect to be informed immediately. Izuku straightens, nodding with a seriousness that matches recovery girl's. Yes, ma'am. I will inform you immediately and take Kaken back here myself. Katsuki glares at him. I don't need you babysitting me, nerd. I'm not weak. Ignoring the jab, Izuku smiles nervously. It's not babysitting, Kaken. And it doesn't mean you're weak either. It's just, making sure you're okay. Whatever, Katsuki mutters, swinging his legs over the side of the bed and pushing himself to his feet. He wobbles slightly, but quickly steadies himself, even glaring at Izuku when Izuku instinctively moves to help him. I'm fine, he repeats, his tone firm, though there's something about the way his gaze lingers on Izuku that's different than usual. Recovery girl watches them both carefully before nodding. Take it easy for the night, Bakugo. You too, Midoriya. Katsuki doesn't respond, brushing past Izuku and heading for the door. Izuku hesitates, but then hurries after him. Kaken, wait, he calls, his voice hesitant as they step into the quiet hallway outside the infirmary. Katsuki stops but doesn't turn to face him. What now? Katsuki asks, his voice still gruff, but somehow softer than usual. Izuku catches up, his expression earnest. I'll walk you back to your room. Just in case. Katsuki finally turns, his crimson eyes narrowing and a small flicker of irritation flashing behind them but very quickly disappearing for some reason. TCH. Do whatever you want, nerd. Just stay out of my way. Izuku nods, falling into step beside him as if it's something natural. As they walk through the empty hallways, a nagging feeling tugs at Izuku's chest, something he can't quite put his finger on. Katsuki isn't yelling as much, and his words aren't as sharp as they usually are, especially when directed to Izuku. Other than that, his gaze feels unusually intense whenever it meets Izuku's. Maybe it's just the lingering effects of the quirk, Izuku tells himself, but a small part of him wonders, and silently hopes, if there's something more to it than just that. The walk back to the dorms is deafeningly quiet. Izuku follows behind Katsuki, his footsteps light but deliberate, trying his very best not to disturb the heavy silence that stretches between them. Katsuki's pace is fast, his footsteps loud as they echo down the empty hallway. His hands are shoved deep into his pockets, his shoulders stiff, and he's staring straight ahead, as if he's entirely submerged in his thoughts. Usually, the silence between them would be broken by Katsuki's usual barrage of insults, "Stop hovering, nerd," or "Quit being so DMN clingy. F off." But tonight, there's nothing. Not a word. Not even the typical scowl. Katsuki is simply thinking about God knows what, and Izuku wishes he's in a position where he can simply ask Katsuki what he's thinking. Izuku feels a strange kind of tension in the air, a sense of something unspoken hanging between them. It makes his chest feel tight, his mind racing, but he can't bring himself to ask what's bothering Katsuki even if he's dying to find out. Not when Katsuki's fire seems to have dimmed for whatever reason, not when there's something almost fragile about him tonight. Izuku can't quite put his finger on it, but it's highly unsettling. What's going on? Izuku can't stand the silence any longer. He hesitates only for a moment, glancing at Katsuki's back as he continues to march ahead, before quickening his pace to catch up. "Kaken," Izuku starts, his voice tentative, unsure if his words will be welcomed or dismissed. "Are you sure you're okay? Maybe we should go back. I'm fine, Deku," Katsuki interrupts, his voice flat and controlled. It's not harsh or snappish like it usually is whenever he's talking to Izuku, but it's not comforting either. It's just subdued. And concerning. There's none of the usual edge, the bite that always accompanies his words, and it should make Izuku feel happy, but it simply throws him off balance. Izuku blinks, surprised by Katsuki's calmness. He'd expected a sharp retort, a snap of impatience, but instead, there's only that quiet firmness, the kind that reminds Izuku of the resolve Katsuki always has. It doesn't sit right with him though. This softer side of Katsuki, the one he almost never sees, is very much welcome, but is still unnerving. He doesn't know what to say to that. He doesn't know what to do when Katsuki is so calm and soft. When Katsuki is screaming at him as usual, Izuku knows exactly how to react, but when he's like this, Izuku honestly doesn't know what to make of it. Before Izuku can process his confusion, Katsuki's sharp eyes flick to him. "What are you gawking at, nerd?" "Nothing." Izuku stammers, hands raised in defense. He feels his cheeks flush, a bit embarrassed about being caught staring at Katsuki. "TCH, dumb nerd," Katsuki mutters under his breath, but it has no venom behind it, which makes Izuku even more confused. This is so unlike Katsuki. He's not usually this calm, especially when Izuku is involved. It's like he's suddenly changed. The change is subtle, but Izuku can't ignore it. He's known Katsuki his entire life. He knows how he's like, how he talks, how he reacts to everything. But this time, Izuku feels like he's walking on unfamiliar ground, trying to navigate this new version of Katsuki. By the time they reach the dorm building, Katsuki's pace slows just slightly, as if he's aware that Izuku is once again trailing behind instead of walking beside him. He glances over at Izuku, and for a split second, his gaze softens, almost imperceptibly. "You didn't get banged up earlier, did you?" Izuku freezes, stunned by the question. He had expected a lot of things, gruff complaints, angry screams, annoyed looks, but this. This is entirely new. Katsuki, concerned about him as if he actually cares about Izuku for whatever reason. This isn't something Izuku is used to. Izuku feels his heart skip a beat upon hearing those words of concern. Is the only thing Izuku can muster, utterly caught off guard by the unexpected concern in Katsuki's voice. The fight earlier, idiot, Katsuki grumbles, his eyes scanning Izuku's body like a hawk. That guy was throwing punches like a DMN wrecking ball. You didn't get hit, did you? Did you ask recovery girl to treat you or whatever? Izuku blinks, his mind struggling to catch up. He shakes his head vigorously, waving his hands as if to dismiss the very idea. I am fine. I didn't even take a direct hit. I'm okay, really. Katsuki's eyes narrow, studying him with a precision that makes Izuku feel like he's under a microscope. It's like Katsuki is trying to gauge whether he's lying about potential injuries. Without a word, Katsuki steps closer, his movements sharp and decisive. His hand shoots out, grabbing Izuku's arm with a grip that is firm, but not painful, just tight enough so Izuku wouldn't be able to take his arm back if he wanted to. It's possessive in its own way, and Izuku can't help but shiver at the unexpected contact. Katsuki has never touched him so gently for years. It's so overwhelming that Izuku almost wants to cry. Let me see, Katsuki demands, his voice gruff but oddly warm. Izuku freezes, his heart racing. Kaken, I said I'm dash, but before he can finish, Katsuki is already rolling up his sleeve, his fingers moving with practiced ease as he checks for any bruises or injuries. Izuku stands there, completely still and unable to speak or protest. His mind is a blur, trying to process the fact that Katsuki is checking on him as if he actually cares about Izuku even just for a little bit, and Izuku doesn't know how to deal with it. Kaken. Izuku whispers, his voice barely audible, but the words feel strangely heavy. Shut up, Katsuki mutters, his eyes focused intently on the area around Izuku's forearm, still looking for fresh wounds that he seems to think Izuku might be hiding. He's not rough, not at all, but there's an urgency to his movements, as if he's scared to find an injury there. If you're hiding something and you pass out later, I'm not carrying your butt to the infirmary, so just tell me if you're injured. Izuku's cheeks flush a deep red. This is not like the Katsuki he knows. Katsuki never cares about him this much, it's always Izuku worrying, because it's not even questionable just how much Izuku cares about Katsuki. But tonight, for some weird reason, it's like everything just flipped. Katsuki, the one who usually exudes an air of confidence and nonchalance, is showing this kind of concern. To Izuku. Anyone would be concerned about this strange scenario. Seriously, I'm okay, Izuku says softly, his voice almost pleading now, trying to assure Katsuki, even though the touch of Katsuki's hand on his arm is making him feel dizzy. Katsuki releases his arm with a grunt, stepping back casually as if he didn't just turn Izuku's world upside down. Good. Don't pass out or something. Izuku watches him, feeling a strange mix of emotions swirling inside of him. What the hell just happened? His heart is still racing, and his thoughts are all over the place. He doesn't understand why Katsuki is so different tonight, and it's honestly making him a bit anxious. There's obviously something wrong with him, perhaps related to the quirk incident, but Izuku doesn't know enough to form a conclusion. They continue walking in silence, the weight of the unspoken words pressing down on Izuku's shoulders. He can't shake the feeling that something important just passed between them, something that goes beyond simple concern. But he simply stomps on it. He's probably just tired. Right. His brain is probably making things up from the lack of sleep. When they reach Katsuki's room, Katsuki pauses at the door, his hand on the handle. For a long moment, he doesn't open it. He just stands there, his back to Izuku, as if he's thinking about something, contemplating. So Izuku also stands there, waiting for Katsuki to enter his room. Then, finally, Katsuki turns and looks at Izuku, his expression unreadable. Thanks, Katsuki says, his voice quieter now, almost reluctant. For staying with me. In the infirmary. Izuku blinks, completely thrown off by Katsuki's genuine tone. Ha! Katsuki shifts uncomfortably, clearly not used to being so open about his gratitude. His gaze drops for a brief moment, and then he looks back at Izuku, looking straight into his eyes. You didn't have to stay, but, yeah. Thanks. Izuku's heart stutters in his chest. Katsuki's thanking him. With real sincerity. This is something he never expected to hear. Not once in his life. Katsuki is usually too proud to show this kind of vulnerability to anyone, much less Izuku. He stands there, stunned, not knowing how to respond. The words get caught in his throat, tangled in confusion and surprise. What? Katsuki snaps, his voice suddenly sharp again, as if to cover up the brief softness he allowed. Don't make it weird, nerd. Izuku flails his hands, trying to find the right words, but they're all jumbled on his tongue. And no, it's not weird. Not at all, he says quickly. I mean, of course I stayed. You're my friend, Kaken. Katsuki rolls his eyes, his scowl returning. Go to bed, Deku. You look like CRP. Go think about yourself for once. Izuku wants to protest to tell him he's fine, but the exhaustion of the day is finally catching up with him. His body suddenly feels completely drained, and the weight of the emotions he's been carrying around all day, especially everything that involves Katsuki, leaves him speechless. With a soft, almost hesitant good night, Izuku turns and heads to his own room. Once he's inside, he collapses onto his bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the night replays over and over in his mind, refusing to give him a moment of peace. His heart still races, and his head is spinning from the unexpected tenderness in Katsuki's words and actions. What just happened? Izuku whispers to himself. Katsuki doesn't thank people, especially not like that. He doesn't check anyone for bruises. He doesn't care, at least not about Izuku. But tonight, it was different. Completely different. And even now, Izuku doesn't know what to make of it. Groaning, Izuku buries his face into his hands. What's wrong with him? But as much as he's trying to understand Katsuki's strange behavior, there's something else tugging at him. It's the way his heart just wouldn't stop racing every time his eyes met Katsuki's, the way his chest tightened when he noticed the warmth in Katsuki's gaze trained upon him. Ugh, what's wrong with me? Izuku groans, rolling over onto his side and shutting his eyes tightly. Sleep doesn't come easily that night. Chapter 2, Quirk affects the classroom hums with its usual pre-class chatter, with voices overlapping in a rhythm that Izuku has grown accustomed to. But today, for some unknown reason, something feels off. It's an intangible tension, like a string pulled too tight, humming with the threat of snapping. Izuku can't exactly pinpoint the source, but whatever it is, it makes his skin prickle and his thoughts wander uneasily. It's strange, but somehow, Izuku has a feeling that something is about to go completely wrong. Sliding into his seat, Izuku tries to shake the feeling. He has to focus today and actually listen to the lectures. His mind is already a tangled mess, he doesn't need more bothersome thoughts to add to that. The events from last time is still replaying in his head, Katsuki's quiet and unique form of concern that only he is capable of executing, the way he'd muttered a couple of phrases showing his concern for Izuku, but still in a harsh and rough tone that's so Katsuki. It wasn't the usual harshness of his tone that lingered, it was the softness underneath, raw and unguarded, that unsettled Izuku the most. Other people probably won't notice, but Izuku knows Katsuki the most. He heard the concern in his tone perfectly, and it only serves to confuse him. Katsuki doesn't do soft. He doesn't show his concern so openly. Not with anyone, but most especially not with Izuku. A loud thunk yanks him from his spiraling thoughts. Eat. Izuku blinks up, startled, to find Katsuki looming over him, his usual scowl fixed firmly in place. What's more surprising than Katsuki seeking him out and talking to him so randomly, though, is that on his desk, right in front of him, sits a bag of snacks and a chilled drink, the items arranged with a precision that seems almost deliberate, which is very Katsuki-like, now that Izuku thinks about it. What? Izuku's voice comes out small, unable to hide his bewilderment. Katsuki's scowl only deepens, his arms crossing almost defensively. You're always running on empty, idiot. You always sleep so late because you're too busy nerding out on those stupid notebooks, so you don't wake up early enough for breakfast. If you keep skipping meals, you're gonna drop dead, and then what good are you to anyone? How will you compete with me if you're dead, huh? You ever think about that, you nerd? Just eat the DMN food. The words are sharp, clipped, but there's no real bite to them. If anything, Katsuki's posture betrays something almost uncertain. Vulnerable. No, that couldn't be right. Katsuki doesn't do vulnerable either. Thank you, Kaken, Izuku stammers, his fingers hesitantly brushing the edge of the snack bag. The items are all things he likes, things he's never mentioned aloud and definitely doesn't expect Katsuki to know, of all people. Izuku doesn't voice out his amazement and confusion, but his heart does give an odd, lurching skip that tells him so much more than he's ready to hear. Whatever, Katsuki snaps, but Izuku can clearly see a faint blush creeping up his neck before he stomps off to his seat as if what he did for Izuku is no big deal. Izuku stares at his back, and then turns his attention back to the snacks, as if he's afraid that they might vanish if he doesn't pay enough attention to them. The thought that Katsuki had gone out of his way for Izuku just because he's bothered that Izuku isn't eating breakfast sends warmth blooming in Izuku's chest. But he quickly shakes it off. He can't let those weird feelings linger. And this doesn't really make any sense. Katsuki doesn't do things like this for anyone. There's something wrong, but Izuku can't quite put his finger on it. The moment of his quiet introspection doesn't last long, though, definitely not long enough for him to reach a conclusion. Good morning, Midoriya. Ida's familiar voice booms, cutting through the background chatter and taking Izuku's full attention instantly. His stride is purposeful as always, the picture of precision and punctuality. Morning, Deku. Uraraka chirps as she hops onto his desk, her bright smile lifting some of the tension in the room and making Izuku a bit calmer. Shudo follows close behind, his calm demeanor grounding and helping Izuku to further calm his fast-beating heart. Izuku, he says with a slight nod of greeting. For a brief moment, everything feels normal again. Izuku relaxes completely under the comfort of his friend's presence, grateful for the distraction. Good morning, everyone, he manages, his own smile returning as he faces them. But even that peace is short-lived. Oi. The single syllable slices through the air like a knife, sharp and commanding. Izuku doesn't even have to look to know who just spoke. As expected, as Izuku turns, he sees Katsuki glaring from his desk, his jaw tight and filled with tension. Don't crowd him, he growls, the threat in his voice palpable. Go sit the hell down. The cheerful atmosphere completely evaporates. Uraraka's eyes widen in confusion, and Ida pauses mid-adjustment of his glasses, both of them clearly caught off guard by Katsuki's sudden interruption and rudeness. Kaken. Izuku's voice pitches high in alarm, his hands waving as if to physically dispel the tension. It's fine. They're not crowding me. They're just shut it, Deku, Katsuki cuts him off, his eyes never leaving the group. It's very clear that he's bothered by their presence, but Izuku just couldn't understand why. They haven't even done anything to piss him off. Shudo raises a single eyebrow, his expression calm but clearly intrigued by what he's witnessing. We'll talk later, Izuku, he says briefly before retreating to his seat all the way to the back. Uraraka and Ida exchange uneasy glances before following Shudo's lead, though not without a few lingering looks of concern directed at Izuku. Izuku slumps in his chair, his face burning with embarrassment. He glances at Katsuki who simply decides to avoid his gaze, his scowl set like stone and still clearly annoyed. What the hell was that? Is all Izuku can ask himself. But unfortunately, it's not that easy to get an answer. The morning continues, following a similar pattern. Katsuki's presence looms like a storm cloud, his sharp tongue and territorial glares keeping anyone from getting too close to his and Izuku's seats. Every time someone approaches, Katsuki is there, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, and giving everyone a murderous glare that can probably take them down on the spot. It's suffocating. It's confusing. But more than anything, it leaves a strange, fluttering warmth buried somewhere deep in Izuku's chest that he doesn't know how to address. This is probably not the right place to dissect all of those feelings anyway, definitely not with Katsuki's presence practically drowning him. The worst of it all comes when Kirishima finally bounds into the room, all bright and happy as usual, a breath of fresh air that Izuku so desperately needs. "Morning, bro." Kirishima greets, his eyes zoning in on Izuku, probably noticing the look of distress on his face. He throws an arm around Izuku's shoulders, all ready to cheer him up. "You good? You look kind of dash, get your hands off him." The whole room goes silent, all eyes snapping to Katsuki who's now halfway out of his seat, his hands slamming on Izuku's desk. Everyone is completely in shock. Sure, Katsuki's been acting weird this whole time, but not to this extent. Kirishima freezes, his grin faltering as his eyes dart between Katsuki and Izuku, wondering what's going on. What? You heard me, Katsuki growls, his voice low and dangerous. Don't touch him. Kaken. Izuku's protest is high-pitched and frantic, his hand waving wildly. The comfort that Kirishima was able to bring has now dissipated completely. It's fine. Kirishima's always shut up, Deku. Katsuki cuts him off again, his glare locked onto Kirishima like a predator sizing up its prey. Kirishima, finally getting the message, takes his arm off of Izuku and raises his hands in mock surrender, stepping back with a sheepish chuckle. Okay, chill out, man. No need to bite my head off. Just wanted to greet Midoriya. The tension doesn't dissipate as the room reluctantly returns to its usual chatter. Whispers flit through the air like restless insects. What's up with Bakugo? Is he jealous or something? Izuku sinks lower in his chair, his face burning as he buries it in his hands. He knew something weird was going to happen today. When he peeks out, Katsuki is staring at him, not with anger, but with something deeper, more intense, that sends shivers down Izuku's spine. Katsuki has glared at him so many times before, but not once did he look at Izuku in this way. It's overwhelming. It's bewildering. But the strangest thing is how Izuku doesn't hate it. The cafeteria is alive with its usual chaotic energy. Trays are clattering on tabletops, students are laughing and chattering over the din, and the savory aroma of curry is wafting through the air. Izuku walks alongside Uraraka, Ida, and Shudo, carefully balancing his tray. The noise and bustle inside the cafeteria provides a welcome distraction from this morning's bizarre events. With his mind too busy taking in the noise around him, there's no space left for him about Katsuki's odd behavior earlier. Today's curry smells amazing. Uraraka exclaims, leaning over her tray with an excited grin. I concur, Ide says, his glasses catching the light as he gestures with his free hand. A balanced meal is crucial for maintaining peak physical condition. Izuku smiles faintly, trying to match their enthusiasm. He tells himself to focus on the moment, on the comforting normalcy of being with his friends. But a nagging weight lingers at the back of his mind, pulling his thoughts in another direction, a direction he doesn't want to venture off to just yet. As they approach the table they usually occupy, Shudo glances at Izuku with his typical calm demeanor. You seem distracted, Izuku. Is something wrong? Before Izuku can even think of an answer, a voice cuts through the noise like a blade, a voice he's been trying to distract himself from this whole time. Deku. Izuku freezes mid-step, nearly losing his grip on his tray. His head snaps toward the source of the voice, and there's Katsuki, just as expected, stomping toward him with all the subtlety of an earthquake. While Izuku knows that he didn't do anything to deserve Katsuki's fury, he prepares himself for a fight anyway. Keikaken. Izuku stammers, his heart lurching inside his chest. Katsuki doesn't stop. He grabs Izuku's wrist, firm but not painful, just enough to make sure Izuku can't pull away, and begins pulling him away from his friends with single-minded determination. Wait. What are you dash? Izuku struggles to keep his tray steady, his feet scrambling to keep up with Katsuki's pace. Oi, Bakugo. Uraraka calls, her voice rising above the cafeteria noise, clearly bothered and annoyed by Katsuki's strange behavior. What are you doing? Let him go. Katsuki doesn't answer, his focus fixed ahead as if he didn't even hear anything. The students around them part like a wave as he drags Izuku toward the far end of the cafeteria where his own friends sit at their table. Kaken, stop. My friends dash, Izuku protests, glancing back at the trio they've left behind, all looking at him with shocked and worried expressions. They'll live, Katsuki growls in annoyance, not breaking his stride. By the time they reach the table, Izuku is out of breath and utterly bewildered and confused. Katsuki pushes him down into a seat with a scowl that dares anyone to object. Sit the F down, Katsuki orders before dropping into the seat beside him as if it's a totally normal thing to do. Izuku blinks, clutching his tray like a lifeline. But why dash? Eat, Katsuki snaps, his tone making it clear that the conversation is over and Izuku has to just listen. The table falls silent as Katsuki's friends, Kirishima, Kaminari, Mina, and Shiro, stare at the two of them in stunned confusion. Izuku can relate. He doesn't know what the hell is going on either. Kirishima is the first to break the silence, leaning forward with a nervous laugh. Bakugo. What's up, man? You're acting kinda, he glances at Izuku, searching for the right word before continuing, intense. Shut it, shitty hair, Katsuki grumbles, his arms crossing over his chest in a show of defiance. His eyes flick to Izuku's tray, scanning it like he's trying to figure out whether its contents meet his approval. Izuku, caught in the middle of the awkward scene, feels his cheeks heat up. He's not used to receiving so much attention. It's fine, he says quickly, trying to ease the tension between Katsuki's friend group. I'm fine, really. Totally fine, Kaminari chimes in, his tone light and teasing as he nudges Kirishima. Right, Yeah, no problem, Kirishima says, smiling brightly as he nudges Mina. We're all cool here. Mina rests her chin on her hand, her sharp eyes sparkling with mischief. So, Bakugo, are you gonna tell us why you suddenly decided to abduct Midoriya? Or should we just roll with it as if it's something you normally do? Mind your own DMN business, Pinky, Katsuki snaps, glaring at her before turning his attention back to Izuku. Izuku doesn't know what to make of the attention Katsuki is giving him. He doesn't know if it's a good or bad thing, and honestly, he's not too eager to find out. Izuku shrinks in his seat, staring down at his food, not really feeling the longing to eat right now. The atmosphere is too suffocating, and he doesn't know what to do or say to make it better. Besides, his friends aren't around. He's surrounded by Katsuki and his friends. They're Katsuki's people, not his. The awkward silence stretches on until Mina and Kaminari, ever the mood lifters, start chatting again. Their lively banter slowly diffuses the tension, and with Kirishima laughing along with them, the easy camaraderie soon returns to the table. Just as Izuku begins to relax at the familiarity of the people around him, Katsuki reaches over and drops a piece of chicken onto his tray. Eat that, Katsuki says gruffly, acting so nonchalant as if this is something he normally does. Izuku looks at the chicken, then at Katsuki, then at the chicken again, his brow furrowing in confusion. He doesn't understand what Katsuki's trying to do. There's something weird about him, but Izuku just can't figure it out. I already have enough food, Kaken dash, just eat it, Katsuki interrupts, his glare daring Izuku to argue. And of course, with Izuku being Izuku, he does dare. I don't need dash, I don't care what you need, Katsuki growls, his voice low. You're gonna eat it, nerd. Stop arguing with me. Izuku's face turns bright red as the table falls silent again. The others are no longer joking around with each other, their full attention now on him and Katsuki. Thanks. Izuku says weakly, picking up the piece of chicken and taking a small bite out of it just to please Katsuki, his face so hot that it feels like it might ignite. Katsuki grunts in satisfaction and turns back to his own tray, acting as if this is normal, as if him dragging Izuku away from his friends just so they can sit together, and then giving him a portion of his own meal, is something that usually happens between them. And it's not. There's nothing normal about it at all. The rest of the lunch passes in a surreal haze. Izuku barely touches his food, too distracted by the weight of Katsuki's presence beside him to even feel any kind of hunger. Every time he thinks he might relax, Katsuki pushes another piece of food onto his tray or snaps at someone for talking to Izuku too much and distracting him from eating. By the time the bell rings, signaling the end of lunch, Izuku is so drained, he feels like he's just run a marathon. As they stand to leave, Katsuki claps a hand on Izuku's shoulder, making him flinch, and then steers him toward the door without letting go. Let's go, he says, his tone leaving no room for argument. Izuku stumbles after him, his head spinning, too tired to even bother to argue with Katsuki or ask him why he's doing this. Over his shoulder, he catches a glimpse of Uraraka, Ida, and Shudo watching from their table, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. What's going on? Uraraka mouths, her brows furrowed. Izuku can only shrug helplessly as Katsuki pulls him along, leaving him more bewildered than ever. Katsuki is touching him, and not in a way that inflicts pain. Katsuki is touching him, and he's not letting go. What is happening? Izuku thinks, his chest tight and his thoughts a jumbled mess. And to his growing frustration, another thought bubbles up before he can push it away, this one more bothersome than all the thoughts he's had before. Why does a part of me not want it to stop? By the time the final class of the day ends, Izuku feels like he's been through the ringer. Katsuki has shadowed him relentlessly, dragging him from one place to another even during training, with an intensity that borders on obsession. Every time Izuku tried to slip away, Katsuki was there, his crimson eyes daring him to try harder to get away from his sight. Whether it was forcing Izuku to stay close to him during their classes, hovering over his shoulder when he goes out to the hallway, or snapping at people for taking up too much of Izuku's attention, Katsuki seemed unwilling to let Izuku out of his sight. The worst part of it all is the silence. Katsuki has offered no explanation so far, only sharp glances and gruff commands, leaving Izuku's mind spinning with questions, leaving him a complete mess. So when the final bell rings, Izuku wastes no time. Gripping the straps of his backpack tightly, he slips out of the classroom while Katsuki is still distracted while talking to Kirishima. His heart pounds as he weaves through the crowded hallway, keeping his head low. Just a few minutes of peace, he tells himself, glancing over his shoulder in fear that Katsuki is already running after him for whatever reason. The hallway seems endless as he darts around a corner, finally reaching the lounge where he and his friends usually study together when they find the common room too crowded and noisy. Relief floods him when he spots Uraraka, Ida, and Shudo sitting around their usual table, a wave of familiarity wrapping around him and giving him comfort. Deku. Uraraka calls, waving him over with a grin. Finally. We barely talked to you all day. Izuku drops into a chair beside her, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He's probably been holding his breath ever since he left the classroom, scared that breathing too loud will make Katsuki appear out of nowhere. Are you okay? Ida asks, his glasses catching the light as he leans forward. You look frazzled. That's the understatement of the year. Izuku is freaking out. I'm fine, Izuku says quickly out of habit, though his voice lacks conviction, and by the look on his friends' faces, it's pretty clear that none of them believes him. Uraraka narrows her eyes at him. Okay, but seriously, what's up with Bakugo? He's been glued to you all day. Did you two have some kind of bet, or are you suddenly really good friends again? No. Nothing like that. Izuku interrupts, his face turning red in embarrassment. I think he's just worried because of yesterday. Yeah. That must be it. Worried. Ida repeats, skepticism dripping from the word. With all due respect, Midoriya, Bakugo's concern usually manifests as yelling and cursing. This is completely new and different. Uraraka nods in agreement, resting her chin on her hand. Yeah, it's like he's turned into some kind of guard dog. A really angry one. And very possessive, Shudo says flatly, his mismatched eyes cutting through the conversation. It's not just worry or anger. He's glaring at people who get too close to you. Everything he's done today revolves around you. That's not normal. Izuku freezes, his hands clenching his knees from the tension. Kaken's always been intense, though, he says, thought even he doesn't believe the excuse. Yes, Katsuki has always been intense, but not in that way. Sure, but this is next level intense, Uraraka presses, practically voicing out his thoughts. Like, he was basically about to bite Kirishima's head off earlier just because he was touching you. I thought they were best buds. Indeed, Ida agrees, his voice laced with concern. Bakugo's behavior is uncharacteristically overbearing. Are you certain nothing is wrong? Because if there is, we have to report this to the teachers. Izuku lets out a shaky sigh, slumping in his chair. I don't know. He's been acting weird since yesterday. But maybe it's just his way of processing what happened during our patrol. He did lose consciousness and everything. It was pretty serious. Shudo tilts his head slightly. Or it's the villain's quirk. The room goes quiet. Uraraka and Ida are silent because they don't know about what happened during the patrol, and Izuku is silent because the puzzle pieces are finally finding their way to build the picture inside his head. Izuku's eyes widen as he stares at Shudo. You think the quirk affected him? That's what the quirk does. Shudo nods, his expression calm but serious. It's possible. The timing matches. Whatever that villain hit him with might have amplified his protective instincts, or warped them entirely, seeing how concerning his actions are today. Ida adjusts his glasses, his expression grave as he finally understands what's going on. If that's true, it could be dangerous to leave it unchecked. Bakugo's actions seem unhealthy. We should consult Recovery Girl immediately. I should talk to him, Izuku says softly, his green eyes flicking to his friends. If something's wrong, he has to know. And Kaken's always been stubborn. He doesn't like it when people try to help him. I really need to push him just to convince him to see Recovery Girl. Uraraka's brows knit together. Are you sure that's a good idea? He's been so intense. And if he really has unhealthy feelings for you, I don't think you should even be alone with him. What if he suddenly loses control and hurt you? Izuku hesitates, and then shakes his head. I'll be careful. But I think I really need to talk to him. I think it's partly my fault because I didn't help him during the fight. And I was the first person he saw when he woke up, so that's probably why he has strange attachments to me right now. I'm sure he wouldn't want this either, so we shouldn't treat him like he's a bad person. The others exchange uncertain glances. Be careful, Ida warns, his voice firm and authoritative. If Bakugo's behavior is influenced by a quirk, Uraraka is right, he could hurt you. You should worry about yourself more, Midoriya. Izuku opens his mouth to respond, but the words die in his throat as a familiar sound reaches his ears. Heavy footsteps echo down the hallway, growing louder with every second. His stomach drops. This could only be one person. No way. How did he find me? Shudo's head tilts slightly toward the sound. Did you tell him you were coming here? That probably wasn't a good idea. No. Izuku whispers frantically, already half standing and scanning the room for any other exit just in case there would be a need for it later. The door swings open with a deafening bang, taking all of their attention. Katsuki stands in the doorway with his strong presence, his crimson eyes zeroing in on Izuku with unrelenting intensity, an intensity that means a lot different to Izuku now that he has an idea about what's happening. His jaw is tight, his hands curled up into fists as if he's ready to fight, and the tension radiating from him is impossible to ignore. "Deku," he growls, his voice low and dangerous, "what the hell are you doing here?" Izuku feels frozen, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Keikaken. You ran off just to hang out with these extras." Katsuki spits, his gaze flicking disdainfully to Uraraka, Ida, and Shudo, looking at them with an expression that's akin to disgust. "What the hell, Deku? Why the F are you with them, again? You're supposed to stay by my side." The room falls deathly silent. With those words, Katsuki had just confirmed their hypothesis. Uraraka's jaw drops. Ida adjusts his glasses in stunned disbelief. Even Shudo's usually stoic expression flickers with surprise. They had an idea about why this is happening, but still, seeing Katsuki act like this in real life is shocking at the very least. "Kaken, what are you talking about?" "Oh, of course I hang out with my friends. Why wouldn't I?" Izuku stammers, his voice barely above a whisper. Katsuki steps further into the room, his frustration crackling like static in the air. "Don't play dumb. You're supposed to stick with me. Not them. What part of that don't you get?" Izuku gapes at him, unable to process his words. None of it is making any sense. His friends exchange uneasy glances, the tension in the room thick and suffocating. "Bakugo," Shudo says evenly, breaking the silence, "you're not acting like yourself. Is this because of the fight yesterday? Don't you think you should see Recovery Girl instead of bothering Izuku and making a scene?" Katsuki snaps his glare to Shudo, bristling like a cornered animal. "Shut the hell up, icy hot. This doesn't concern you." The air seems to crackle as the confrontation escalates. For a moment, it almost looks like Katsuki is about to attack Shudo. "Kaken, stop." Izuku finally finds his voice, stepping forward. "Shudo is right. We can talk about this calmly, but Katsuki cuts him off, his voice sharp, and so is his glare. "Don't," he says through gritted teeth. "Don't act like you understand what's happening right now. You don't get it, Deku. You don't understand." The door behind Katsuki slams shut as he takes a few steps forward, the sound reverberating like a gunshot, locking them all in together. Izuku's breath catches as Katsuki stares at him, the intensity in his eyes leaving no room for escape. This might just be more dangerous and concerning than Izuku thought it would be. Chapter 3, Fractured Truths. The lounge is unnervingly still, despite the presence of 5 of UA's most prominent students. A strange heaviness hangs in the air, as though the room itself is also holding its breath, waiting for something to break the tension between Katsuki and Izuku. The soft hum of the air conditioning offers little comfort. It's the kind of silence that presses against your skin, thick and suffocating, a palpable reminder of the discomfort that lingers between them. Izuku can feel it weighing on him, and he knows he's not the only one. There are 5 of them here, but no one seems to know what exactly to say next or what to do with the situation. Izuku's gaze flicks across the room, first to his friends who are still visibly shaken by Katsuki's strange behavior, and then to the explosive blonde himself. Katsuki stands by the door, his arms crossed and his usual scowl firmly in place, but there's something about his posture that feels off, rigid and unyielding. The tension radiates from him in waves. Izuku can't help but feel his heart race a little faster at the mere sight of Katsuki acting so intense right in front of him and seemingly because of him. Still, his mind keeps circling around the same thought: something is wrong with Katsuki. Finally, unable to stand the silence any longer, Izuku speaks up, his voice soft and tentative, as if each word might shatter the fragile calm in the room. "Maybe, maybe we should go see Recovery Girl if you're not feeling well. He hesitates, then adds quickly. She could make a more thorough diagnosis. Maybe they can finally figure out what the quirk did, figure out what's wrong with you. The suggestion lingers in the air, but Katsuki's reaction is immediate. His eyes narrow sharply, and for a split second, Izuku feels a flicker of fear shoot through him. He's faced Katsuki's wrath before, but there's something different about how angry and upset he looks right now. No, Deku, what the hell's wrong with you? Katsuki growls, his voice thick with irritation and impatience. There's nothing wrong with me. You're the ones overreacting like a bunch of idiots. Izuku opens his mouth to protest, to tell Katsuki that their concern and worry are definitely reasonable given the circumstances, but Katsuki doesn't give him a chance. And you're not running away from me. I know what you idiots are thinking. You're not going anywhere with them, Deku, he continues, his voice suddenly low and dangerous. You're staying with me. I don't care what the hell they think. Izuku freezes, his mind unable to comprehend what he just heard from Katsuki's mouth. His breath catches in his throat as he looks at Katsuki, confusion clouding his thoughts. Kaken, stop talking if you're gonna argue with me, Deku, Katsuki snaps, his tone cutting through the room like a knife. His gaze shifts toward the others, darkening with something that could only be described as possessiveness. None of you know SHT about this, so don't even try to get involved. You don't get to take him away from me just because you're scared of me. Ida, always the voice of reason, straightens his back, his eyes filled with concern. But, Bakugo, you're not acting like yourself. You can't blame us for worrying about our friend. We can't just let you take Midoriya without knowing what exactly is going on with you and if Midoriya will be safe with you. Yeah, Uraraka chimes in, her voice laced with worry. You've been acting really weird the whole day. Are you sure you're okay? Katsuki's glare intensifies, his fists clenched at his sides, and the room falls into an unnerving silence. His body trembles with barely contained rage, and his voice, when it comes, is a low growl that sends a shiver down Izuku's spine. But more than that, it's his words that really startles Izuku. I've been with Deku longer than any of you DMN extras, he seethes, his words thick with frustration. We've been through more SHT together than you can ever imagine. So, no, you don't get to decide that we shouldn't be together. I've earned the right to be by his side, not you. Izuku's heart stutters in his chest, not sure how to respond to that. He can feel his breath catch, his mind racing to make sense of it all. It's not the first time Katsuki has acted so intensely, but this feels different. This is for a completely different reason. Something is definitely off, something deeper, and Izuku doesn't know how to untangle it. It's not a competition, Kaken. Everyone here is my friend, Izuku says softly, trying to defuse the situation, but his words barely reach Katsuki. It is a competition, you DMN nerd, Katsuki barks, his eyes flashing with frustration and something else Izuku can't quite name. You're mine, Deku, you always have been. I'm the one who's known you the longest, and they don't get to take you away from me. The words hit Izuku like a slap, echoing in the stillness, and for a moment, no one knows what to do. The air is thick with the weight of Katsuki's confession, and Izuku feels his entire body freeze. This isn't the Katsuki he knows. The brash, hot-headed boy from his childhood who's always ready to curse at anyone and pick fights. Yes. But this isn't right. The words he's saying simply do not make any sense. Something is wrong. Something is terribly wrong. His throat tightens as he opens his mouth to speak, but instead of the words he intended, a soft trembling question slips from his lips, one he's not sure he's ready to ask. Kaken, what exactly do you mean by that? Katsuki's expression falters for a split second, his gaze softening and showing a vulnerable side that no one has ever seen before, but it's gone in an instant, replaced with an unrelenting hardness. He takes a sharp breath, his chest rising and falling with the weight of what he's about to say. I can't believe I have to spell it out for you. I'm in love with you, dumbass, Katsuki spits, as though it should be the most obvious thing in the world and Izuku is stupid for not knowing about it in the first place. It should be obvious. Just come with me already because this situation is pissing me off. The words hang in the air, jagged and sharp, slicing through the tense silence. Izuku stands frozen, his heart pounding loudly in his chest, unable to process what just happened. Katsuki, his childhood friend, the one who had always been brash, abrasive, and fiercely independent, is in love with him. It doesn't make any sense. It can't make sense. The others are equally motionless, their gazes flicking between one another, unsure how to respond. The room is so still it feels as though the world outside has stopped turning. But it's Katsuki's intense gaze that keeps Izuku rooted to the spot. His eyes are filled with frustration, and yet, beneath the anger, there's something softer, something genuine, something more vulnerable. Izuku can see it. He can feel how genuine Katsuki's words are, and it terrifies him. That's when Shudo decides to step forward, placing himself between Izuku and Katsuki, his voice calm and measured as always. This must be some kind of quirk manipulation, he suggests, his tone careful but firm. Bakugo, you were hit by a quirk when we were out on patrol. And Izuku was the first person you saw when you woke up. You're under the illusion that you have romantic feelings for him because of the quirk, but it's not real, and you should calm down before you do something that you'll regret. Katsuki's fury is immediate, his body tense, hands clenched into fists so tightly his knuckles go white. You don't know anything about me, BSTRD, he growls, his voice dripping with venom. Don't say SHT about something you don't understand. This is none of your business. This is between me and Deku, and no one else, especially not you. Shudo stands his ground, his expression unwavering. You're right. I don't know everything about you, but I do know that you're not yourself right now because of the quirk, he replies, calm and collected. And I'm not going to let you hurt Izuku. Katsuki takes a step forward, his body radiating tension and his eyes flashing with something dark. You got problem with me, icy hot. Do you have feelings for Deku, huh? Wanna fight me or something? His voice is low and dangerous, a growl beneath every word. If you do, then why don't we settle this outside? I'll knock that pretty boy attitude out of you in no time. Shudo's eyes never leave Katsuki's, his expression neutral, though his voice is firm. I don't have romantic feelings for Izuku, he replies, his voice calm, but there's a slight hardness to it now. But he's my friend and I care about him, so I won't let you near him while you're in this state. It's not safe. Before anyone can react, Katsuki lunges forward, the air between them charged with violence. Shudo responds instantly, the two colliding with a force that seems to shake the room. Punches fly and grunts of exertion fill the air as the two relentlessly fight each other. The crackle of their quirks clashes in the tense space, sending a shockwave of energy through the room. The room is simply not big enough to cater such strong quirks. Izuku is momentarily stunned by the explosion of motion, but his instincts kick in quickly. He rushes toward them, grabbing onto Katsuki's arm with all his strength, trying to pull him away from Shudo. He really doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of him. Kaken, stop. Ida is quick to act as well, reaching for Shudo and pulling him back to stop him from attacking Katsuki. Enough. Izuku's grip tightens on Katsuki's wrist as Katsuki resists, pushing forward with his eyes wild with fury. However, upon noticing Izuku's touch, he's suddenly distracted from the urge to fight Shudo, his fingers instantly clamping down on Izuku's arm, the pressure almost painful, but Izuku doesn't pull away, grateful that the two are no longer fighting. I'm not letting go, just so you know, Katsuki growls, his body rigid with tension. He pulls Izuku closer, as though keeping him away from Shudo and everyone else is the only thing that matters. Izuku's heart races at Katsuki's words, and he can feel the heat of Katsuki's breath against his skin with how close they are right now. His own pulse is erratic, a storm of emotions swirling inside him. Kaken, you need to calm down, Izuku pleads, his voice shaky. There's no reason to attack Shudo. We can talk about this calmly. Please. Katsuki growls in frustration, but there's a flicker of something softer beneath the anger, as if he's genuinely taking Izuku's words into consideration, and that confuses Izuku even more. But he's wrong. I'm not being affected by some weak extra's quirk, DMN it, he mutters, shaking his head as though trying to clear it. I love you, Deku. Why can't you just believe me? Why the would I ever lie to you? Izuku can't help the way his heart aches at those words. His chest tightens, and a lump forms in his throat as he tries to remain calm. Katsuki sounds so genuine, as if he truly loves Izuku like what he's claiming, and while that confession is not unwelcome at all, Izuku knows that Shudo is right. Katsuki isn't acting like himself. It's the quirk. Something's wrong with him and Izuku shouldn't believe his words right now. We should check anyway, he says quietly, his voice almost a whisper. He doesn't dare to reiterate the exact words Shudo had said earlier, knowing that it will just make Katsuki more upset. Just to make sure that you're okay. Let's go to Recovery Girl, okay? You were attacked by a villain, Kaken. I'm just worried about you, we all are. Katsuki grumbles, clearly reluctant, but his posture eases just slightly as he listens to Izuku's words, as he takes in the weight of Izuku's genuine concern for him. Fine, Katsuki mutters, his voice low. We'll go check with Recovery Girl, but don't you doubt. Me again, Deku. When she confirms that there's nothing wrong with me, you better stop questioning me. Izuku swallows hard, the pain of knowing that Katsuki truly believes that his feelings are real stinging deeper than he expected. Because those feelings are fabricated. But Katsuki doesn't know that yet, so Izuku isn't going to push it. Katsuki will realize it himself when he's back to normal. Okay, he whispers, nodding, though the word feels heavier than it should. Let's go. The walk to the infirmary feels like an eternity. Each step they take is weighed down by the unsaid things hanging between them, the pressure thick and suffocating. Katsuki's grip on Izuku's arm is unyielding, possessive, his fingers digging into the soft fabric of Izuku's jacket as if he's afraid someone might snatch him away at any moment. Every time Izuku tries to breathe through the tension, he catches a glimpse of his friends following silently from the sidelines, their faces a mixture of concern, confusion, and frustration. There's an unspoken agreement among them to say nothing, to do nothing that might provoke Katsuki further. None of them have seen him like this before, this raw, desperate energy crackling in his every movement. His eyes burn with the kind of fury that Izuku knows all too well from being subjected to it multiple times in the past, but it's a lot different right now. It's distorted, like something inside Katsuki is clawing to be set free, like something that has always been hiding inside of him is now spilling out uncontrollably. Izuku feels his chest tighten with 1,000 conflicting emotions. He keeps glancing at Katsuki, watching the storm brewing in his expression, his face set in an angry scowl, his body tense with barely contained frustration, every muscle coiled as if ready to explode at any moment. Katsuki's gaze is locked straight ahead, his jaw clenched so tightly that it might break, and Izuku can feel the weight of that anger pressing on him from every side. It's like walking on the edge of a cliff, every step precarious, every moment an agonizing wait for something to give way. I'm not going anywhere, Deku. And there's nothing wrong with me, Katsuki mutters under his breath, the words low and sharp. It's as if he's trying to keep the world at bay, trying to block out anything that might threaten the fragile hold he has on Izuku. So you don't have to look so scared. I'm not going anywhere without you. Izuku swallows, the lump in his throat growing heavier by the second. He takes a steadying breath, trying to calm the storm inside himself. I'm not looking at you any differently, Kaken, he says, his voice softer than he intends, tinged with an ache that just won't go away. I don't know what's happening. I just want to help you. I just want you to be okay. Katsuki scoffs, a harsh sound that cuts through the air, and Izuku feels his grip tighten around his arm, just enough to send a jolt through him. It's as if Katsuki is trying to reassure himself that Izuku is still there, that he's not leaving, that no one is taking him away. I don't need help, Deku, Katsuki spits, his words dripping with disdain. He always did hate being seen as someone vulnerable, as someone who needs help, so it doesn't surprise Izuku that all this talk about getting help is making him upset. I'm only doing this to prove something to you. I don't need anyone's help. I know what I'm doing, and I know what I want. Izuku's chest aches at the words, but he doesn't pull away. He keeps his gaze forward, trying to ignore the heavy silence between them. Shido's eyes flick to the side, but he remains quiet, his expression unreadable. Ida, on the other hand, is muttering under his breath, like trying to prepare some speech to ease the tension and clearly in distress, but it's clear that even he doesn't know what to say. Uraraka seems nervous about what Katsuki might do, keeping her eyes on him and Izuku the entire time as if preparing herself to interfere if it proves to be necessary. Izuku appreciates his friends a lot. As they reach the infirmary, the door swings open with a soft creak, and Recovery Girl is standing before them, her tired but kind eyes scanning over the group. Her expression shifts when she sees the way Katsuki is holding Izuku, her eyes lingering on him for just a moment longer than necessary. Bakugo, Midoriya, she greets them, her voice warm and laced with concern. What brings you here today? Is this about the quirk? Did you notice signs of it? Izuku hesitates, the words suddenly feeling too big in his mouth. He looks at Katsuki who is just staring at the floor, his entire body rigid with resistance. Katsuki clearly doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want anyone questioning him, doesn't want to face the truth that Izuku can feel pressing down on them both, so Izuku has to speak up for him. Kaken's been acting different the whole day, Izuku says slowly, his voice careful, almost as if he's walking on glass. We think it might be, maybe a love quirk or something that's affecting his feelings and perception of things. Recovery Girl raises an eyebrow, her gaze softening but her posture visibly tense, as though she knows how dangerous this kind of quirk could be. She gestures for Katsuki to sit on one of the beds, her movements measured and calm. Is that so? She says, her voice gentle but with an edge of authority. Let's take a look, then. I'll have my apprentice scan you again for traces of the quirk. If it's still lingering on you, then it could explain why your behavior changed all of a sudden. Katsuki grits his teeth but doesn't protest. His posture is a clean message, he's not happy about this, but he's not going to show any more weakness by fighting it. Besides, he has something to prove to Izuku. He sits down on the bed, arms crossed tightly over his chest, his fists clenched so hard his knuckles are white. He looks like a caged animal, ready to snap at any moment. Izuku watches him closely, his heart aching as he takes in the way Katsuki's entire body radiates discomfort. He's trying so hard to hold on to that familiar hardness of his expression, the anger that has always been his shield from any other emotion. But underneath, Izuku can see the cracks, how fragile Katsuki really is. Katsuki is still his Kaken, after all, the same boy he's known for years. The apprentice begins the scan, and the room falls into an oppressive silence, the only sound the quiet hum of her quirk. Katsuki doesn't speak, his gaze fixed on the floor, his entire body tense. Izuku doesn't know what to say either. Every word feels like it would be a betrayal to the rawness of the moment, to everything he's feeling that he's kept bottled up for a very long time. It's clear that something is wrong, something far beyond their understanding, but Katsuki isn't ready to hear that yet, and Izuku isn't sure if he's ready to have his fears confirmed as well. Recovery Girl and the apprentice share a look before Recovery Girl speaks up, Bakugo, can you look at Midoriya? At the request, Katsuki is very eager to comply, his gaze leaving the floor and moving to where Izuku is standing instead. Izuku notices how his expression softens instantly, as if merely looking at Izuku is enough to calm him down, to make him feel a lot better. Izuku doesn't know what to do with this knowledge at all. Finally, after a few more seconds, the apprentice looks up, eyes wide with confirmation and maybe even a bit of sympathy. There's a big chance that it's a love quirk. At the very least, it's something that forms some sort of connection between him and Midoriya, she says, her voice serious, almost clinical. I sensed traces of the quirk the first time I scanned him, but when he looked at Midoriya as requested, the traces of the quirk intensified and became volatile, almost as if it's trying to reach out for Midoriya. A love quirk is a fair diagnosis. Recovery girl sighs softly, turning to Izuku with a look that's equal parts knowing and sorrowful, as if she knows exactly how much this will hurt Izuku. We've seen this before, she says, her voice low but steady. It's a dangerous quirk, one that can cloud someone's judgment, especially when it comes to feelings of attachment and affection. This is something that needs to be fixed and corrected as soon as possible because it can lead to disastrous things, but it won't be easy. She glances at Katsuki who still hasn't moved, his head hung low and eyes wide in denial. This is definitely not the answer he expected. We'll notify the pros who are tracking down the villain responsible. Once they find her, we'll bring her here to reverse the effects of the quirk. Until then, I'm afraid we'd have to deal with some changes. Izuku nods, trying to hold back the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Thank you. I just want Kaken to be okay. If there's anything I can do to help, anything at all, please let me know. Hearing Izuku's voice seems to snap Katsuki out of his thoughts. He turns his attention to Recovery Girl and her apprentice, his eyes filling up with burning fury and also something more dangerous and so unlike him, desperation. You're lying, he shouts, his voice raw with emotion. You think you know me. You think you know what I feel. His feet PND against the floor as he stands, his body trembling with barely contained rage. He steps towards Izuku, closing the distance between him, his face merely a few inches away from Izuku's. My feelings are real, Deku, he spits, his breath hot against Izuku's skin. I don't need you or anyone else deciding what's real or not for me. You don't get to decide what I do and don't feel. Izuku recoils instinctively, but he doesn't step back. He meets Katsuki's gaze, holding it even as his heart races in his chest. Kaken, no. Katsuki's voice cracks, his anger spilling over, but there's something else there now, something vulnerable, something that resembles fear. He shakes his head, his words faltering as they spill out. You don't get it. His hands tremble at his sides as he looks at Izuku, eyes raw and wide with something more than just rage. This isn't because of a DMN quirk. I've always felt this way about you. I've always he pauses, as though the weight of his confession is too much for him to bear. I've always loved you, Deku. Can't you see that? I'm not lying to you. Why can you just believe me? Izuku's heart stutters, a jagged pain cutting through his chest. Kaken, his voice is barely a whisper, but it carries the weight of everything he's feeling in that moment. His chest feels light, his throat constricted as through the very air is being squeezed from his lungs. He wants to believe Katsuki, wants to believe that this is real, that Katsuki's feelings for him aren't just the result of some quirk but something that has been there all along. But the truth lingers, cold and unyielding. Izuku can't fool himself into believing that it's real. Not when he and everyone else knows that it's not. I know you think that, Kaken. I know you feel that way right now, but it's the quirk. It's manipulating your feelings. It's not but it's real. Katsuki's voice rises, and he grabs Izuku's arm to pull him closer, his grip fierce and desperate. His eyes are wild, pupils dilated, his breath coming in ragged gasps. I'm the one who decides whether my feelings are real, not you. Not any of them. So stop telling me that I don't know how I feel because no one else in this room knows about my feelings more than I do. Izuku closes his eyes, the weight of his words crushing him. His own breath is shaky, his pulse erratic as he feels the ache of everything he's ever wanted hanging in the air between them. It's so unbearably cruel, to show him what he wants so desperately while also making it very clear to him that it's something he can never truly have. Kaken, I know you would know how you feel best under normal circumstances, he whispers, voice barely audible over the pounding in his ears. But you have to understand that a quirk is influencing you right now. This isn't you. This isn't real. This isn't how it's supposed to be. When you go back to normal, you'll understand that we're only telling you the truth, Kaken. Tears sting at the back of his eyes as he struggles to hold on to his own truth. The words feel like a betrayal to himself, to what he truly wants, but they are the truth and they are the only thing he can say. The dream of Katsuki loving him is so close, so agonizingly close and tangible as it's dangled right in front of him, but it's not real. None of Katsuki's feelings for him is real, and that is the cruelest truth of all. The tension in the room is thick, almost tangible, like the air itself is being suffocated by the pressure of unsaid words and uncertain emotions between the two of them. Katsuki has not let go of Izuku's arm since they received the confirmation about the love quirk and had that confrontation, and every inch of his presence is a heavy, looming weight to Izuku. No one dares to break the silence, the atmosphere too fragile for even a whisper. Izuku can feel Katsuki's touch like a burn, the constant pressure of his grip tightening whenever anyone moves too close, as if he's afraid that they would all try to take Izuku away from him. Every flicker of movement, whether it's the subtle twitch of Katsuki's fingers or the shift of his body, feels like an unspoken warning towards anyone who might try to interfere. Izuku is trapped in this strange inescapable space between knowing that he has to help Katsuki, and knowing how dangerous this situation could become. Eventually, Recovery Girl suggests calling Aizawa to inform him about the situation. Katsuki seems to be against it, wanting to just go back to the dorms already, but he doesn't dare to argue, not with the tense air still between him and Izuku. Midoriya, Aizawa's voice crackles through the phone as soon as Recovery Girl is done telling him all about the situation. The urgency in his tone is unmistakable even through the static. I need you to try and keep him calm. I'll come by and attempt to nullify the quirk. If it works, we might be able to resolve this quickly. But if it doesn't, then we need to have a long conversation about this. Izuku nods despite knowing that Aizawa can't see him. Okay, please hurry, sensei. The phone call ends with a faint click, the buzz of the line cutting off abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. And then, the room falls back to the weight of uncertainty, broken only by Katsuki's quiet, restless shifting beside him. Every time Izuku glances at him, he sees the strain in Katsuki's posture, the tension in his shoulders, and the flickering rage in his eyes. He's holding on to something so fragile and broken, something that isn't real, and Izuku feels for him. Shudo, Ida, and Uraraka are still there, watching quietly, their eyes flicking to Izuku as if searching for answers in him, as though they're expecting him to know what comes next. Izuku feels the pressure building up within him, the weight of their expectations crushing down on him. What is he supposed to do? How is he supposed to fix something this complex, when the selfish side of him is enjoying Katsuki's attention and doesn't want this to end just yet? When Aizawa finally arrives, his presence brings a sense of purposeful calm, though the tension doesn't dissipate. He moves through the room with his usual quiet efficiency, rolling his sleeves up as he stands before Katsuki. Aizawa's eyes meet Izuku's for a moment, silent understanding passes between them, a shared hope that this might work. Izuku has to believe that it will, even though the doubt and greed gnaws at him, even though fear coils tight in his chest. Bakugo, Aizawa's voice is steady, but there's an underlying edge of caution. I'm going to attempt to nullify the quirk. You need to stay calm for this to work. Katsuki's gaze sharpens, the familiar scowl deepening as he tightens his grip on Izuku's arm. His voice is a low growl, the frustration and weariness in his tone unmistakable. I don't need your help. There's nothing wrong with me, he spits, though the venom in his words is weak, undercut by an exhaustion that has settled in deep after such an exhausting day. His jaw is tight, and despite the show of fury, Izuku can feel his hands trembling slightly around his arm. Aizawa's eyes narrow but he doesn't back down. He knows how Katsuki communicates all too well by now. He steps forward, his quirk activating with a soft rustle of air, the same careful focus in his movements as always. He reaches out toward Katsuki, his hand poised just in front of him, and the room falls silent, the only sound the sharp intake of breath from the group waiting for something, anything, to happen. But nothing changes. It's clear with the way Katsuki is still holding onto Izuku so tightly. Because if Katsuki is back to normal, then he wouldn't be sitting next to Izuku right now. He would most probably push Izuku off the bed and start screaming profanities at him, maybe even let out an explosion or two out of anger and disgust. And he's not doing any of that, so the love quirk must still be active. "Dmn it," Aizawa mutters under his breath, his brows furrowing in frustration. He steps back, glancing briefly at Izuku before his gaze shifts to the others. This isn't working. Whatever's going on with Bakugo, it's not something that can be solved right now with just my quirk. We need to take a different approach. Izuku's heart sinks into his stomach at the words. His mind races, but the terror bubbling inside him keeps him rooted to the spot. What can they do now? If Aizawa's quirk can't handle it, then what are they left with? Are they really supposed to just wait for the villain to get caught while Katsuki is forced to deal with these feelings he definitely doesn't want? Recovery Girl breaks the silence, her voice sharp but measured. "Aizawa, perhaps it's time we consider separating them, for their safety, of course. This can't be healthy for both of them." The suggestion hits Izuku like a punch to the gut, his stomach dropping at the thought. He doesn't want that. He doesn't want to be away from Katsuki, not now, not ever. He instinctively turns to look at Katsuki, only to find him already staring at Recovery Girl, his entire body coiled with rage. The fire in his eyes burns hotter now, his fists clenching, and Izuku feels his arm being crushed in Katsuki's grip as he snarls. "I'm not going anywhere without Deku." Katsuki roars, his voice full of fury and desperation. "You want to try and stop me from being with him? Go ahead. Let's see if you can handle me." The room freezes. Time seems to halt as Katsuki's words hang in the air, the intensity of his threat vibrating in the silence that follows. Izuku's heart hammers in his chest, the fear rushing through him like a tidal wave, drowning out everything else. Katsuki's anger is familiar, but there's something darker now, something twisted by the quirk, an emotion so deep it warps into this uncontrollable need to hold on to Izuku. "Bakugo," Aizawa's voice is low, but there's no mistaking the authority in it. His body is coiled, prepared to act and interfere if it proves to be necessary. "You need to understand. You're not in control right now. The quirk is controlling you. You need to calm down or you'll seriously hurt Midoriya." "F that." Katsuki's shout cuts through the room like a knife. "I'm not hurting Deku. You're the ones who are interfering when. It's none of your business what he and I do. I'm not letting you separate me from Deku. Not for a second. You think I'm just gonna sit here and let you take him away from me?" Izuku watches, his chest tightening with helplessness as he sees the wild desperation in Katsuki's eyes. The quirk is warping him, twisting his emotions into something frantic, something irrational, and something almost unrecognizable. Ida steps forward, trying to intervene, his voice calm but firm. "Bakugo, you need to listen to reason but before Ida can finish, Katsuki whips around, his face a mask of fury. "You stay the hell out of this, for eyes," he snarls, his voice thick with venom. Shudo, on the other hand, remains calm but wary. His eyes flick from Izuku to Katsuki, his expression guarded. "Midoriya," he says softly, his voice full of concern, "this isn't something any of us can fix right now. If you want Bakugo to stay away from you while he's still being affected by the quirk, then you have to speak up right now. Sensei will help, and we will too. But if you choose to let him stay with you, then you're the one who has to deal with him until they find the villain. You need to make the decision. We can't do it for you." Izuku swallows hard, the weight of their eyes on him feel like a physical force. The room feels like it's closing in, the air so thick it's hard to breathe. He looks at Katsuki, whose gaze is still locked onto him, burning with a mixture of fear and desperation, as if he's afraid of how Izuku will answer. "Kaken," Izuku says softly, his voice trembling with the weight of everything unsaid. "Please don't get mad at them. They're only trying to help. They're worried about you, we all are. And this quirk, it's controlling you right now, so we just don't want you to do things you'll eventually regret. So, how do you feel about being separated? It might help, you know. Maybe you'll feel calmer if we don't see each other for a while, just until the quirk is lifted. Do you think you'll be okay with that? Or do you want me to stay? Katsuki's breathing is shallow, the tension in his body like a taut string, ready to snap. His grip tightens, and the restlessness in him only intensifies. Of course I don't want to be separated from you. Were you even listening to everything I just said earlier? He growls, his voice raw, lacking its usual strength. Don't even think about it, Deku. They can try, yeah, they can, but I'm not weak enough to let them take you away from me. Izuku hesitates, his gaze flicking to Aizawa, who stands silently, waiting for him to make the choice. He knows there is no easy answer, no perfect solution. If he says no, if he agrees to be separated, it could shatter whatever fragile hold Katsuki has left. But if he says yes, if he stays with Katsuki, he's risking everything, even his own heart. He doesn't know if it's the right decision, but it feels like the only one. I'll stay with him, Izuku says quietly, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. If it helps keep him calm, then I'll stay with him. Aizawa sighs, his gaze unreadable but sharp. I'm not particularly happy about this outcome, but I can't force him to be separated from you when you want to stay with him as well. I trust you, Midoriya. I trust that you will make all the right decisions while we're waiting for the quirk to be lifted. We'll make sure the pros assigned to this case track down the villain and get this resolved as quickly as possible. In the meantime, look after him. Izuku nods, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. He turns to Katsuki, whose gaze softens just slightly, the hardness in his eyes giving way to something else, a flicker of relief, quiet but unmistakable. Thanks, Deku, Katsuki mutters, his voice quieter than usual, though the intensity is still there. I knew you got me. I always knew you did. Thanks for choosing to stay with me even if you think I'm crazy or something. Izuku smiles gently, though the sadness in his expression remains. I always get you, Kaken. I'll stay. As long as you want me by your side, I'll stay. As the room settles into a tense silence, the weight of their decision hangs in the air, and Izuku can only hope, pray, that this choice won't break the two of them.